Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Hey, what's happening? And welcome to another edition of the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Ben Mayfield-Smith. He's coming to us all the way over from Australia. He got up extra early for this conversation, and it was a doozy. Now, Ben is the owner of Matter Athletica. It's an online coaching business, but Ben didn't start in online coaching. He actually started in the rugby world and had his path set on the professional ranks of the rugby world in Australia. But then a traumatic car accident and injury changed his course, which eventually led him to personal training and then into the online world. So as you may guess, we got into everything online world related, how he got started, what he did well, what he would do differently, and where his business is headed. So if you're in the online space, this is going to be an episode you want to pay attention to. Ben has a ton of gems to share and has an incredible story. We'll see you on the flip side. Ben, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. How are you, sir?
Appreciate you guys having me on. It's exciting. You're my first, as you can all probably hear, I'm an Australian, so it's my first podcast internationally in America.
This is awesome, and this is like how crazy technology is, right? You're practically on the other side of the world right now, and like we can have a real-time conversation. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. It's something that we found in our realm of business. The most beneficial to like modern technology is that it's allowed us to connect with people that 20 years ago, had we have done this or been in this position, you wouldn't have had access to. Mm-hmm. Like just meeting Kay and Cav, the Catalyst team, being able to talk to like those sort of people, like it wouldn't have happened. It would have had to have been like random coincidence if I was in America maybe. But, it's allowed us to connect with people such as yourself that, it's exciting. It's good.
Yeah, it's cool. It's awesome. I think it helps kind of the cream rise to the top, right? So the people that are doing big things can have those conversations and not have it happen through happenstance, right? This is awesome.
I think like back in the day, we kind of you might have been isolated, being different, or being like kind of a thinker or a bit unique in your area. But now it kind of lets you like connect with other people, I guess, of the same, like you said, cream of the crop rises. It allows you to talk to those different people.
Right. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Well, I mean, let's talk about you. That's why we're here. And so kind of one thing that you made really prominent on your kind of bio on Matter Athletica was intensity, consistency, and passion as being these kind of like three kind of core elements that have really been honed through kind of a lifetime of like hard work, really. And so let's kind of talk about those three. When did that crystallize? When did you come to figure out that those three were kind of the main kind of your ethos, right? Your value system?
It was actually like right at the like before we started Matter, we kind of had to map out like, what is this? What are we trying to do with it? What are we about sort of thing? And it realistically was more of a representation of me than it was about any particular like part of the company or business. Like I didn't want to make things that fit the company. It was more so I want to be authentic to what I believe in and what I do and how I've kind of lived, I guess. And that was kind of like the realm I wanted to make sure the business followed. It's a lot easier for me to be authentic and genuinely passionate about something that I'm passionate about than try and kind of make it up, if you will. So for me, it was always like, everything. I've never been someone who's just gone with it. When it comes to like my rugby league career, when it comes to like study, when it comes to uni, when it comes to work, I've never been just someone who's like, oh yeah, this is just kind of where I fell, so here I am. And so we're looking at everything around that when we're kind of establishing the direction of the company, the marketing, the branding, the imagery, the visualization, how you see it, how it reflects with you. What are the three major things that we want to come through? And it was realistically like I wanted to coach me and find more of me because I wish I had me as a coach. And when I was coming up, when I was younger, when I was like, doing all the things myself, I was kind of I wish I had me sort of moment. And looking at that, I was like, well, I can't be the only one of me. So if I want to coach more of me, what did I want? And, that was, as we kind of touched on, purpose, intensity, consistency. To me, those three became the foundational pillars of success. So whether neither one of them can exist on their own or independently, but all three of them contribute to succeeding. And so for me, that was, everything has to be done with a purpose. There has to be a purpose to things that we're doing, whether it's the smallest possible action. Like even if you're having a shitty week or a shitty month, if you're doing at least something towards a purposeful action, it's at least moving forward. Do it with intensity. Like everything has to be done with intensity. Half-assed measures get half-assed results. And then from there, the biggest results come when you consistently apply it. And so to me, that was kind of like, that's bodybuilding in a nutshell. That's my rugby league career in a nutshell. That's anyone that I know that succeeded. So that was kind of like, well, how do I take those lessons and apply it to the general person I want to work with? And we came with that.
And so have you always been into bodybuilding? I know you had kind of a sporting background when you were younger and kind of rugby was your sport of choice. And so is that kind of what got you interested in fitness to start?
Yeah, so kind of like I played rugby since I was about 5. So I've always had that sporting background towards doing something a bit more intense. Like in Australia, it's not, it's nowhere near the level of passion I think that the NFL gets or like your college football gets. But at the same time, it's kind of like, that's our thing. We have AFL over here, we have rugby league. If you're going to get passionate about anything, it's probably those two things. And that was kind of like, like my first exposure to doing something really intensely and wanting to win. I never found myself playing just because it was fun. It was fun because we were trying to win. And so a big thing from that was my cousin, my family, were all into training, all into rugby league, all into that sort of career. And I remember one of my cousins had a home gym, and every time I go down and see him, he had his walls just decked out in muscle magazines, muscle development magazines, midsection cutouts of like Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, Victor Martinez. And so, I was going down watching him train, and, he was a lock playing basically 90, 100 kilos, this big, massive dude. And here I am at like 50 kilos. I'm like, well, how do I get this big? How do I be as big as this dude? How do I get to this position? So it kind of exposed me to wanting to train and being put in that environment because I needed to get bigger for the positions I was playing. And so then I was like, well, I'm small. How do I get bigger? I'm small. How do I get bigger? How do I keep getting better? And then the kind of exposure to bodybuilding came when I had my car accident, had my back diagnosis, and then they kind of said, look, you can't do X, Y, Z again. And I was like, well, what's one thing I can do? And we kind of ended up down the path of, I love training. I love nutrition. I love, growing myself. If I can't play rugby league again, then what's the next thing I can do? And I was like, well, time to go all in on bodybuilding, and fell in love with it ever since.
So when you say rugby league, I'm not as familiar with that system in Australia. And so is rugby league like a professional system, or is it like a club system, or is it kind of like a tiered, a combination of both?
Yeah, so rugby league is, I think it goes a little bit differently of a pathway than what you guys have for for gridiron or NFL. So you have the club level, and you play that from juniors. So what I guess it's similar to like your little league. Like we start playing at 5. I started playing at 5. And from there, it goes right the way up through your schoolboy level. The difference is we don't have a collegiate rugby league. We have schoolboys or a high school division. And that's where you really stamp a name, or you really sort of you dominate. I never got to the national level. But at the same time, I was part of some pretty successful teams. Like we sort of won our state championship, I guess equivalent to what you guys have over there, which was a pretty unreal experience for us. And then the difference being there is you go on to play like your reserve grade, your representative football, or your state competition. And that's usually where contracts come into it to go to the professional status for the NRL. So you guys, I think, go the collegiate route, and you sort of get selected there, and then usually get drafted into the NFL if you're obviously going to get drafted. So ours is a little bit different, where you can just be most of the Q Cup or the New South Wales Cup, which is like in major states that play it, they're usually working a full-time job. Usually they're tradies or sparkies or, doing something like that. And then they get picked, they'll play Q Cup, get drafted from there to go play the NRL. So a little bit of a different route, similar sort of direction, but that's kind of how our system works over here.
Right. And so, I mean, was that the path for you? Were you kind of like, hey, I'm going to try and rise through the ranks and ultimately kind of play in the professional league?
Yeah, so that was always my big goal. Whether or not it was going to happen, I'm never one to say it was an absolute certainty or anything like that. But
right.
I was progressively getting better and working my way up to different places. Like I changed towns to start in a different league because I wanted to try like a new level of intensity. I wanted to try make it somewhere where I knew no one. So I played the same league, the same region for I think it was like 10 years. So I was kind of, we'd won our grand final and it was kind of like, well, what's next? How do I do something different? How do I get out of here? And so, I went to this town that just lives and breathes rugby league. And I was like, well, if I can find work out here and I can sort of make it over there, then, work my way into the major clubs.
Ben, hang on one second.
Surely.
Ben, hang on one second. Hey there, you sexy little W. Sorry for interrupting your regular programming. This is Trevor. Now, I've got a big announcement, something I'm really, really excited about, and that is the Super Coaches Summit, our Coach Catalyst Summit that is taking place in August 5th and 6th in Reston, Virginia, right outside of the Dulles Airport. Super easy to get to. Now, we've been to a lot of events. We go to a lot of events, and we wanted to make this event different. Most events are educational. You have great speakers on stage. You take a bunch of notes. You go home and do nothing. Right? We want this event to be more practical. We want it to be tactical. We want you to leave the event with a better business than when you came. Not going home and hoping that you implementing at the event. And then the second thing we want this event to be is the best networking, connecting, collaborating event you've ever been to. So we've got some really special things in store to facilitate those connections. So if you're looking for a different event, something that's going to level you up and an event that's going to allow you to have a better business when you leave than when you came, definitely check out the Super Coaches Summit. We are dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's. This thing is going to be on point, and I want you to be there. So we had a little interruption there as someone was jumping in, but let's jump back into this rugby piece. So, I mean, we'd kind of had asked about like, was professional league like something that was in your mind, right? And so you had switched to a new city to kind of take that next step. So tell me a little bit about that stage of your life.
Yeah, so I was coming out of, what was I? About 19. We just finished playing under 18s. We just won our grand final, all sort of jazz. And it was kind of that next direction was how do I get out of that local town-itis, if you will, and kind of move to that next region where I might not know anyone. I literally just have to start from scratch. And I knew there was a town my brother had moved to, which was basically like they just lived and breathed rugby league. I was like, well, I could find some work out there, try play out there, make it out there. And that was kind of my focus was, I know they had a direct pathway to representative level, and from there they had a direct connection to the NRL or the professional level. So I was like, well, if I can make it in this town, I can sort of get a name there, do something. My logic was never, if I'm not doing this by 17 or 18, I'm out. It was more so, how long can I possibly take to figure this out and know for certain that 100% will not happen? And so my thing was just work and find a way to make it work. And so from there, I kind of got out to this town, established myself in the team. We got to the grand final my first year there. That was a really awesome experience there. I was drafted for the next level up the following season. I was like, cool, this is happening. And then right around there was where I had my car accident and basically just kind of canned my rugby league career in the arse. So I was in a sort of like motor vehicle collision and basically ended up with some chronic diagnosed spinal damage. So it was like L3-4, L4-5 spinal damage, nerve damage, degradation of the bit of the T-spine, and pretty much just sort of said like at 20, I was on path for this sort of next level at about 21, had the car accident, and I went through and up like, I think it was about 4 years of court over here, like legal battles, ended up in, I think it was 21 different specialist offices trying to either like assess this, fix this, tell me I was broken, tell me I wasn't broken. And basically the concluding diagnosis was you have a chronic technical spinal disability. And it would pretty much never allow me to play rugby league again to the level that I wanted to. So it kind of flushed the dream down the toilet, if you will, regardless of what level I thought I was going to. That just kind of took it away and ended up being the deciding factor that it wasn't going to happen.
So mentally, right, you were like, this is where I'm going, right? And then in an instant, things change. So was there a period of time after that was like trying to maybe figure out who I am now, because like all of who you were was like, I'm going to play at this. This is where all the effort and intensity was going. And now like by no means of like you making the decision was made for you that you need to go somewhere else. Was that a pretty challenging period of time?
Yeah, especially at 21, I think that was probably the harshest, like sort of not harshest experience. Obviously, experience is subjective, but it was a very intense experience at such a young age that I'm watching all of my mates still continue to play. I'm watching my brothers continue to play, watching their friends go on to representative levels, watching my friends go on to representative levels, all the things that I'd intended to do until, the age of play over here is realistically like, 30 to 32, where you're kind of like, now I'm just mucking around to have fun. So I was 10 years out of what the top age might have even been if I decided to quit. And all I'd known since I was 5 years old was that this is this thing I was going to do. 20 to 25 was where I knew it could happen, or I couldn't happen, or I'd make that move. And I got to 21, it was kind of taken. So it ended up being a really challenging identity crisis. Like I didn't know who I was outside of rugby league. I didn't know who I was outside. Like I had a job, I had a career that I was practicing a trade, and I was working on my apprenticeship, all those things. But it was kind of like that was fostering my sport, not so much that I was living to do it. It was kind of like this will be the safety net for should this not happen. My dad's pathway was always basically like, you can do what you want, just make sure you have a trade. So me trying to make that happen, and the trade was kind of the safety net, I lost both of those things at once anyway. So the instant that accident happened, I tried to keep training. I tried to go back to work, go back to the gym. Go back to my trade, and pretty much got 2 weeks into the job before my spine just basically snapped, and I had to go to the emergency room, and just it exacerbated the problem even further. Ended up in 4 years of court, and I went through some pretty intense levels of self-doubt, depression. There was I don't know how the social media world likes to frame it these days, but suicidal tendencies. Like I was in a pretty bad place where it was like, what's the point? And it kind of got to that pretty heavy level of me just sort of looking at it going, well, this is literally everything I wanted to do, everything I had. I had a relationship at the time that ended. It was a very full on, probably 3 to 4 years that, you're seeing most 20 to 25 year olds out partying, playing their sport, taking to the next level, training, living. Right. And my whole thing was, can I do this in case my lawyers are watching? Can I do this in case the doctors are watching? What's safe for me to do with my back? So all these things was basically just like 4 to 5 years of just a restricted living of pain and like mental and physical suffering. And that kind of, it was a heavy experience, if you will, to go through at like such a young age.
Right. What was the trade that you were learning?
So I was a formwork carpenter. So basically like high-rise carpentry over here.
Okay, cool. And so because of the pain and debilitation, like it just wasn't able to like physically even do that anymore. That just like, it wasn't on the table.
Yeah, 100%. So it was pretty much like our occupational therapists. I had to go see occupational therapists, remedial therapists, rehabilitation clinics. And it was kind of all mutually agreed upon that was just not going to happen. Like the way our workplace insurances and stuff over here works, the liability that I would possess if I went back onto a site would just be, too high, all that sort of jazz. So it was kind of like it was kind of a process then of assessing what did I have left? Like what was I able to do? What was I doing? What was available? What could I achieve? What could I redirect to? And the biggest focus, and I think I spoke about this once with Cav, Coach Cav, was that the competitive drive that I had and the interest in competing and succeeding was basically the only thing that got me through my rehab. So I took that competitiveness and that drive, intensity, and basically applied it to everything the doctors told me to do for 4 years to make sure that I was just rehab focused. We got to a point where I was doing Pilates, yoga, and physio 5 times a week. And it was the most boring shit that I've ever done in my entire life. Like I'm not someone who can sit still and just calmly think through my thoughts for long periods of time. Mm-hmm. And so in order for me to go to yoga, I would have to pick like a person in the class to be better than, or I'd have to pick someone in the class to outmove, or, I was basically like picking the veteran lady who's done yoga for 10 years and be like, well, how do I beat her? Like, I don't know how you beat someone at yoga, but in my head, that was kind of like the rationale that I had to kind of make it exciting and want to actually achieve it or do it or keep going. So that was like it was finding those values again, and kind of touching back there where the recognition of what my values were, purpose, consistency, intensity. I had to apply that to something that I had no interest in, which was, yoga. It was more of a means to an end to me. And that was kind of like where I had to focus myself for that 4 years was, well, I can't go back to work yet. I can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. I've got to go through these law cases and whatnot. I was like, well, what's the one thing I can do? I can get good at this because this is going to allow me to go back to this. And so that was kind of like my, the most exciting part to it, I guess, that I had that was in my control. It was really just narrowing down a list, I guess, stoically of what's in my control and what's not, and doing my rehab and my yoga and Pilates, and all that was kind of the only thing that I had to focus on.
So was that what kind of helped you get out of this, let's just call it like a rut, right? Like this valley that you were in, or were there any other specific things that you did that helped you kind of mentally turn it around and find your life again?
Yeah, I think I'm someone who's very much like, where do I want to go focused as well. Like I'm very long-term goal driven. I believe in setting very long-term goals. Like, I don't care how impossible they are. Like, I'll usually set them myself, provided it gives me a framework or somewhere to work towards. So for me at the time, the process then was kind of figuring out, well, where do I go next? But at the same time, where am I right now? And what's the thing that I need to do immediately to take action and move forward? And I've always been a big believer, like I'm a big listener to like Dr. Jordan Peterson. I study psychology. So there's a big aspect there for me of kind of looking at it and going, well, what's the smallest possible step that I can take? I might not have framed it at the time like that, but it was kind of a process of, when you're stuck in a rut, and I work on this with clients, especially myself now, is when we don't know where we're going, we've got nowhere to go, we're not sure, how far away it is, the best thing you can do is just simply put the smallest step forward and put yourself in a position of momentum. And that was, for me, the biggest thing that I had was, kind of mapping out at least the next step. And what was the next step? Is just going to that next morning class. What was the next step after that? Going to the class after that. What about there? Doing my core work, doing my cardio, doing activity, trying to get some form of movement. It was an exchange of basically do an action, debilitating pain, do an action, debilitating pain. But every time it got a bit more manageable or a bit more pain-free. I realized then, I recognized then that things like alcohol, partying, drinking stuff wasn't really suiting my recovery. So I had to ease off on that sort of stuff. It was a lot easier to sort of sit at home and be miserable and drink than to go to the gym and do those things that I should have been doing. And I recognized that none of that served me. So, it ended up in a period of time where I stayed away from alcohol, stayed away from partying, didn't do anything outside of that. And so it was kind of, that purpose there was to just make myself better some way, and then figure out the rest after that, as long as I knew that I had at least a plan in the immediate future to try and figure out this spinal damage, pain, rehab, court cases, all that sort of jazz. So, it was, that was kind of the plan there. Yeah.
My favorite thing about Coach Catalyst.
One of the things I love most about Coach Catalyst.
There are lots of things I love about Coach Catalyst.
And the reason why I love Coach Catalyst is that
the accountability off the back of that
is simplicity.
The support is amazing.
It allows me to give so much of me to my clients.
The drip feeding of content.
I can schedule lessons for my clients in advance.
Game changer for freeing up time.
It gives me my time back.
It's so simple and so easy.
Hi, I'm Kane, the founder of Coach Catalyst, the #1 accountability and communication software on the market today. We help coaches just like you keep their clients accountable and scale their business beyond what they've ever been able to do before. So if that sounds like something you want, let's take a look at how we can help. So Coach Catalyst was built on the 4 C's of coaching. Those are content, communication, community, and consistency. So for content, you need to go beyond just workouts and deliver the whole experience for the client so they get the results they deserve. For communication, you need to own your communication. If you don't own the communication, team, you don't own the client. So make sure you stop texting clients and use a centralized platform. For communities, get off of Facebook groups and take ownership over your social group with Coach Catalyst communities. And for consistency, the foundation of all results for clients, we took the best-selling book Atomic Habits and built all of these fundamentals right within our app that's going to guarantee to get your clients the best results possible. If you want to start using the 4 C's with your clients: content, connection, community, and consistency, make sure you run over to Coach Catalyst and start a free trial today.
So is this what really got you into fitness then? Because I mean, before really it was sport. Sport was kind of like the main thing. So maybe the fitness was all towards improving performance, right? Where now you'd kind of been in a different phase, a rehab-ish type phase for a long period of time. And so is that kind of what springboarded you into kind of where basically what you're into now?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 parts to it. So the first part, you're right there for sure, is like fitness was mostly towards sports training, power, explosion, growth. Like it was for rugby league, it was for my sport. And then I'd always had a love for Arnie. Arnie was a huge motivator for me. Like I'd read his 1970s bodybuilding encyclopedia, like watched all of his videos, watched Pumping Iron. Like I was, in love with Arnie and bodybuilding. But it was more so from a like this is cool aspect. It wasn't as popular amongst my crowds to do or talk about. So to me, it was kind of like a in the background thing. And then the as the court case kind of come to a close, and they were like, you're not going back to your job. It's time for us to reassess what's next and what you can do. We need to look at what you're interested in or what you can afford to do now, because part of the court case proceedings is they will pay for it. It's part of like a reintroduction to work phase. And so I looked at it and I was like, I'm not going to be a tradie. I don't like to sit at a desk. Ironically, I sit at a desk now some days. I'm not someone who can be inside all that often in terms of like, a corporate ladder kind of thing. And it was that point where I was mixing up, like, what am I interested in? What do I love doing? What am I good at? And because I'd signed up to be a coach after the injury. So the year that I lost the chance to make contracts and things like that, the thing besides my rehab that probably helped me and gave me that exposure to helping people was I went and did my coaching course for rugby league. And so usually like the way it kind of works over here is like if you want to be a coach, you might start with the younger grades, maybe, juniors, middle age, something like that, where it's like 12, 13, 14, 15. I did my coaching course. I know I went straight into coaching men's grade. And because I come from like, I would argue a pretty decent background. And so for me, I was like, I've got all this knowledge. I've got a family history of playing rugby league and sport. And like I played at the state level for high school at what is arguably one of the best levels in the country. And for me, it was like, well, that next thing is, well, how do I pass that on or give that back or share that, because it's a waste of knowledge for me to just hold. So I went and did my coaching course to try and like offload some of that knowledge and sort of help out. So that exposure to coaching people, and then the realization that I loved seeing people succeed, whether or not it was me. Watching the team, like the team we coached that year, got to the grand final. It was always interesting trying to manage personalities and players and teams and that sort of thing. So, and I was more passionate on the sideline than I was playing, but I think it was because I couldn't play, and it was more so like that level of excitement to coaching, that if I couldn't be in there, was I wanted to see everyone else succeed if I couldn't actually impact it on the field. So for me, that was kind of like a 2-pronged, I guess, redirection. Was that injury took everything I had away from me. It was time to reassess what I could do. And then I had a slight exposure to coaching the sport that I loved and recognized that I liked it. Well, what was the next thing I could do for an actual career? Well, you don't earn money coaching at the amateur level here by any means. And, I kind of need that next level of career. So that's where I end up down the route of studying at the Australian Institute of Fitness. Got like what we call like a master trainer over here. So got my certifications in personal training, business, coaching, all that sort of jazz. And it pretty much ended up me taking the route or the direction that I'm in now.
So is a typical structure in Australia, if you get kind of certified as a coach or a trainer, I should say, is it to go work? Do you guys have kind of the big box gym where you're kind of working on the floor? Yeah. Or is it like smaller gyms, or what's that typical path for a coach in Australia?
Yeah, so it can kind of go, I'd argue, a few ways. It's changed over my time, which is cool to see. I'm not always a big fan of it, but it's there.
Right.
So you do your Cert 3 and Cert 4. So Cert 3 is like a group fitness. You're allowed to do group coaching, instructing, that sort of thing. Your Cert 4 gets you your personal training certification. From there, I didn't think that was enough. So I went on to do my ASCA Level 1, which is basically Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. And then from that, I also did my Advanced Diploma in Business. So one of the things I recognized was that the certs over here don't teach you the business side, but most personal trainers, when they start, the employment is through sole trading. So you're basically like your own boss, and you pretty much hire out the gym and kind of head down that route. So I did those extracurriculars to kind of like advance me as much as I could, because again, I just didn't like being average at it. There was no point in me doing something if I was going to suck. And so I took the big box route, like you sort of touched on there. Like we have some similar big boxes to America now. Like we've got your World Gyms, got Good Lives. One of the big boxes that I started in was a Genesis, and it's kind of big open floor, massive concept. 2,000 members to 20 PTs, kind of thing. End up on that massive sort of scope of open training field, and you just kind of get thrown amongst it and say, what's your specialty? Here you go. But then we've also got the route of your, like nowadays with so many group fitness classes, like businesses, like your F45, Fit Stop. What else have we got? We've got things like that. I can't remember the other ones we got here. There's a lot of them. And so you end up on that route. You can go as well, where once you get your Cert 3, you can start working amongst the group classes. And usually they'll have like a pathway for you to succeed there and, make some money while you're also studying. I didn't do that. I had no interest in doing group stuff. It was more so I just want to get straight into coaching people. And that kind of led me in and out of gyms, the nutrition industry, supplementation. I've been in amongst it now for probably 8 years. And that was kind of like, that sort of direction for me. It just kind of, it kept expanding my studies. It kept expanding my experiences and my knowledge. And that's kind of led me to, I guess, the endeavor of Matter now.
So you basically made the transition, because at that time you're making all of your money in the offline world. You're seeing people in person, you're doing consultations, you're running sessions, doing that, right? Where at what point did you make the transition into the online world? Was that kind of like a COVID thing, like a lot of people, or was there a different transition?
So I initially, there's a gap in between there where I've gone from face to face, like you're in the gym floor. I also took a job managing a supplementation company at businesses over here, and so I was working as like a sort of like your GNC over there. I was managing a few brick and mortars over here where I was like in the supplementation nutrition industry. I did that for about probably 4.5 years, about 5 years. And at that point, I stepped away from face-to-face training because the place where I started, I don't think was a demographic for me. And I recognized I need to upskill and do some more certifications and get that better experience and exposure. And that was where I recognized that I wanted to get into like more around psychology and more around behavioral science and like high performance knowledge, getting more study in nutrition. So I went and got my ISSN certifications, make sure that I kept exposing and experiencing like the softer skills and stuff that I think more clients need. And at that point where I realized that in the company I was in, there was no more room for growth, I recognized that I'm someone that can't sit still. And so it was like, well, the plan was to kind of open Matter after 5 years, finish my degree, get my certifications, then I start. And I realized that time frame was blown out and I didn't have the motivation to stay where I was long enough. And peak COVID, we started I think it was the first lockdown here in Australia. We started the online page, the social medias, started giving out free knowledge, free info, free content. It was just a means to like start facilitating people, exposing to the brand. And it was kind of maybe after halfway through 2021, I just sort of said to the marketing part of the team as well, I'm going full time. Like I can't stay in the company I'm in any longer. The misalignment of values of pushing products and not actually directly helping people, it's just not what I want to do. And it kind of got to a point where once my father had passed away, that it hit me with how much I don't want to waste my time. And I don't want to be, someone who like looks back in 20, 30 years saying I should have done this sooner, or, I could have made this work, et cetera, et cetera. So I had this really like eye-opening period of time where my dad's passed away. I'm focusing on bodybuilding. I'm focusing on all this upskill and this study. And I was like, I'm not giving back to people enough. And I'm seeing all these clients come through the door. I'm seeing people come through the door that are having terrible experiences with coaching and you know, being taken advantage of. And it just wasn't aligning with me. And at that point, I was like, well, I can sit on the sidelines and talk shit about other people or complain, or I just get in and actually make the change and make the difference. So it was at that point in kind of, 10th of October, 2021, where I was like, I'm going full time with it. And it's just going to work. It's going to happen. You know, I just put all eggs in one basket, just sort of say, this is what we're doing.
When you were kind of developing Matter, like who was the core market that you were going after? Was it kind of fellow bodybuilders helping with prep, or was it just your everyday people that are looking to lose weight, or who was your target market or your target audience?
No, so I think the biggest thing for me was recognizing I needed to coach me at the age I was when I needed someone. And that was kind of like where identifying who we were working towards, right? Target market, if you will, target audience or target avatar. That was kind of who we started breaking down. And it got to a point where I was like, you know, looking at, yeah, sure, they can be bodybuilders. Like I love bodybuilding. I've got an amazing list of bodybuilding clients. But at the same time, the big thing for me, like you see the Jordan poster behind me, my biggest excitement is understanding great people and the things they do and how they've done them and kind of the elites at where they are. And usually we see in the general population, people separate themselves from them rather than I think them separating themselves from us. And we put them on this pedestal of like non-attainable. We put them on this pedestal of like, you know, they're too good for us, or, you know, they're out of our reach, out of our league. So there's no point trying. I'll never be that person. So why bother? And I took the more, I guess, a different approach and reverse engineered it and looked at it more so, what can I take from this person and give to the average person? How can I make the average person better at what they want to do? And so Matter started becoming more towards that. It's less about exactly what you want to do and more so that you want to be intense and successful about it. And so that was kind of like where we started framing our marketing, our content, information, you know, understanding stress management, performance arousal, nutritional applications, anxiety tools, stuff that I know that I struggle with in my performance days that would have given me an edge if I knew. And people like you, Michael Jordans, they kind of just inherently know it. And I think being able to break down those principles and actually understand them, I could give them to clients or give them to people for them to just take. There was no, you know, most of our content's free, most of our tools are free. And so that thing for me was like, I've identified this is where I want to go and I want to work very similar realm to your, like Coach Cav, that, you know, all his clients are just getting after it. They're all just driven to achieve something. But to me, it was less about a particular sport and more about the fact you just want to do it. If I'm knowledgeable on it, if I know about it and I can help you achieve it or have the tools to help you achieve it, that's what I want to do. I want to take you from, even if it's taking you from average to good versus like, you know, taking the good to being great, I want you to recognize that you can be better than who you are as a person and where you are right now. And here are the fundamental principles to help that happen. And that's kind of led us to, you know, we've got a lot of people that they start off with a small goal. They think like, oh, you know, this sounds, you know, is this an okay goal to set, or this is kind of what I want? And we end up expanding it further and you realize the goals they actually want. And this is kind of like a, you know, something I'll probably touch on a bit later, but I recognize that if I ask people in groups or ask people in larger collections what they want, it's usually a very conservative goal because they don't want to stand out. But I found the more I got to probing the single person in isolation, the bigger their goal was, or the more they were able to speak about it, knowing that it was safe to bring it up, or they'll be encouraged. And so that was kind of like my premise, is like, I want to get people in one-on-one and understand who the fuck they want to be, where they want to go, how they want to get there, and how I can facilitate it. And the goals ended up just streaming out. I started getting people that, you know, one of the crazy things about the direction our business has gone is that the people that we're working with that are high performers are not only improving their physiques or bodybuilding careers, they're graduating master's degrees, they're finishing a second degree at university, they're starting businesses. Like the physique realm is facilitating their life. And I think that's a kind of reflection of the person we want to work with. So that's kind of probably been the biggest identification for me as to who our target market is.
As a gym owner, Coach Catalyst is the key to having low turnover. For several years, I struggled and spent 10 to 20 hours a week communicating with clients via phone calls, Facebook Messenger, email, and text messages. I had tried everything to make my life more efficient. I was at my wit's end. And then I found Coach Catalyst. Since starting the software, I have found a life again, and my clients are thanking me for being so involved in their fitness life. I've cut my daily commitment to interacting with over 300 clients to under 15 minutes a day and have streamlined my 6-week challenges. I couldn't recommend it more. I just don't know if I would even be here today if it wasn't for Coach Catalyst. If you don't have an account already, you're missing out and not helping the people you could be.
And how did you find clients early? Like early on, when you start a new business, no clients right away, nobody knows who you are. How did you start to gain some traction and get kind of that first handful of clients? Where did they come from?
So big thing for us was I'd taken a step back from knowledge sharing, and it really didn't align with me. Like I felt, I want to say lost. I felt incongruent with myself. Having all this knowledge and stuff that I'd studied, it sounds arrogant. It wasn't really arrogant. It's more so like I know one of the best aspects I think to me as a coach is that I recognize I know more than the average person at this very particular field. So we started resharing content, social media, trying to build that up. I had like 500 followers. It was nothing, but I knew immediately in the realm I was working in nutrition, things like that, I had people that were asking questions and curious about stuff that I knew in store and on the gym floor. So I was like, well, I can keep sharing some of that, build up that knowledge base there, and sort of share some content, build that up, and followers slowly started growing. Old friends that didn't really care backed off, and it was just more so started building that baseline of exposure, I guess, to authority. And then we started the Matter page, just the social medias and the website. And we started I've written ebooks. I wrote a 100-page book on stress because I realized how little people actually understand and comprehend stress as a system and a tool. And so, I started writing these free things that I just thought people need to understand further, if you will. And we just started giving away for free. It was like, how much info can I give away for free that people just need to understand? And, there was no expectation of reciprocity. There's no expectation of sign up to anything. It was just, here's the website. Here's this free piece of information. Go download it and read it. And we just kind of kept going with that. And we then also started, me and a colleague started a podcast here in Australia. It's called Bros of Brains. And we're kind of we just shit talk, but we also talk science, nutrition, training, psychology, bodybuilding, powerlifting, kind of expand in that direction. And from there, we've got listeners and followers that have kind of just, when we announced we were going full time, I think I had, on paper, I had 10 people promise me, yep, I'm signing up. I think when we started, there was actually 4 or 5 in the book. So, it was like, I took that step, sold all my assets, sold everything that I needed to kind of support that initial thrust to sustain myself, put all my finance, literally every share that I had, my financial portfolio, whatever wasn't solid locked in, I liquidated and just said, this is going to this direction. And we started off with 4 clients, I think it was, and basically just had to prove ourselves, get results. I had like 5 clients for free as well at one point, just because I wanted to show people like, you give me effort, you give me consistency and effort, and I'll get you a result. And from there, the exchange that we can market it. And I think that was a big thing that people that start out in business in this realm don't really agree with. They kind of want to get paid straight away, or they want to be like this big name coach with no experience. And for me, I was like, well, people don't know who I am. They don't know what I can do. They don't know what I know. I need to prove it. I need that social proof and recognition that I understand this game. I understand you as an athlete or a client. The spectrum was huge. It went from, I had people who wanted to compete across to people who just want to drop 10 kilos. And being able to work across that spectrum of person has kind of allowed that client list to just expand. Like, yeah, I've got maybe like 10 to 15 bodybuilders across a couple of seasons coming up. But at the same time, I've got FIFO workers, I've got CEOs, I've got miners, I've got general just health practitioners, I've got other educators, just a list of people now that diverse that spectrum, all wanting to improve something or learn. So that was kind of like, I think the big thing for me was taking that risk with just free coaching and free services and just a diversity of client population. Early days was 4 or 5 paid clients with no guarantee of the future, and just really honing in on just doing providing them as much value as possible and making sure that value is consistent as each person signed up. And I think that's something we've really tried to uphold, is that, regardless of the number we grow to, if we grow to a number so big that it costs me the quality and value I provide the ones I have, I don't want to do it. And I think that's kind of like resonated to where we are and got us to that point. But it started with those 4 to 5 paying clients and, 5 free clients.
So were you still training clients kind of offline, and that's how you were kind of paying for life as you were starting to get it going? And then it was like, all right, sell all of these assets, get a pool of money that I can maybe live on until this other thing grows up big enough to be able to support me as a human in day-to-day activities?
No, so I'd quit. So I was just managing the nutrition companies at this point, businesses, and I literally just quit that. Just quit it. As I said previously, like the October 10th, just quit. I was planning to go part-time. I was looking at part-time jobs just in like less thinking capacity, more like just laboring jobs, something like that. Couldn't do it. My back was just too riddled. It's an interesting contrast. People always give me a bit of shit over here that I can go to the gym full time, but I can't do a physical job, completely different planes of motion. But it was kind of identified that I just had to go. And I had this pool of savings that I'd been saving for a rainy day. Like I knew that this was going to be something I did eventually. So I just, build up my portfolio, build up XYZ, have finances there in the background. And I've always been someone pretty dedicated. Like I'd already been competing in bodybuilding at this point. So I don't go out and drink, don't party, don't do much else except study. I'm at university full time at this point. And so at that point I was just like, well, I've just got to quit and go with it. And if there's ever going to be a point in time to do it, it's COVID. And that was kind of like, we come out. I tried to make it work. I tried to stay in this old job a bit longer, but I kept getting rejected for, pay rises, for promotions. There was nothing left for me to do. It wasn't exciting. There was no sense of growth for me there other than just passing time. And I was literally told, just make a paycheck, just make the bonuses or whatever, and just make the extra money. And I was like, it's not, to me, that isn't serving people, just selling products to make $1. To me, more so it was like, I want to help people and change their lives. And this is the way I facilitate that inside these supplement stores. Once I realized I couldn't do that properly, it was kind of like, well, it's a no-brainer. There's no point sticking around. So no, there was no safety, background employment at this point. It was just quit the nutrition company. I was still upskilling and educating in university and just said, I've got to make this work. And just pretty much went all in on quitting and trying to make Matter become a thing. Right.
And so with Matter, what was the business model at the time, and has it changed since?
So the business model with Matter has always been a online system, always done online coaching. So whether it be across general populations, whether it be across bodybuilders, athletes, etc., it's always just been an online system. We've changed the things a little bit. I used to do a lot more like face-to-face weekly catch-ups with clients and trying to over-provide. Every week was a half hour to an hour phone call, catch-up, how's your week going? And it got to a point where I realized I actually didn't need that. And it was kind of over-nurturing them and over-mothering them. And we'd get to these points of catch-up and they wouldn't really have problems to identify. They wouldn't have any issues with the week. And so it became more of a, we eased back on that, provided value elsewhere, provided more tools, more resources. We've now got the Coach Catalyst app, all those things that just provide more and more value and accountability and lifestyle intervention without them feeling like they're being overly mothered. And that actual step back, I think, in full-on intense weekly assessment has, I think, improved a lot of our clients, if not made it better. So, that process, probably the major change was that I recognized that, the person I work with, the people that I suit and the people I serve, 99% of them aren't looking for that weekly 1 hour mothering, hey, let's catch up each week and talk. A lot of them are just like, what do I need to do? What can I improve this week? Where did I struggle? What's some tools we can put into play? Give me my feedback. And so I use a lot more Loom now. I use video check-ins, recordings. I do catch-ups. Don't get me wrong. I really try to put my psychological tools to use to make sure that if a client's going through a struggle, I take time to sit with them, catch up for coffees, or do our live catch-ups if we need to. But generally, I allow them to be autonomous and tell me that. if I start identifying some patterns, like, hey, let's chat about this. This keeps happening. Let's have that catch up and see what's going on. But I find the freedom and empowering them with education now and tools, I've been able to take that step back and not need to be as hands-on, and they're still thriving, growing, improving. So that was probably the biggest change for me. Was I was trying to do too much because my sort of like empathy side was taking over. It's like, I need to see these guys, make sure they get their value, don't undervalue me or think that I don't care. And a lot of them just kind of said, hey, like, I'm sweet. So that was probably the biggest change for me as a system tool, was just sort of taking a bit of a step back in so much hands-on coaching.
So for your structure now, do you typically meet with them like once a month, or is it as needed, or is there cadence?
Yeah, it kind of becomes as needed. Hey, like the option's there once a month if they need it. But it kind of becomes like most of them just end up telling me not to bother. Or they'll just, keep up to date with what we're doing. They just keep doing their check-ins. They do their data. Generally, I can see like if I notice, especially with like the tools I've studied now in psychology. So I've done extracurriculars around behavior change, motivational language, communications, acceptance and commitment therapies, like recognizing anxiety patterns. So I've done a lot of extracurriculars in the psychological realm alongside my uni degree. And so if I notice like certain language changes or behaviors or continued behaviors, I'll sort of address it with them on the spot. Say, hey, like, just do that check-in. Like I'll notice some certain things. Hey, this keeps happening, or I'm seeing this in your check-in and your feedback. How about we catch up and just sort of run through this, what's going on. And from there, we get to expand a bit further. But yeah, majority of the time it's now as needed. Like a lot of them find that, they're thriving, they're growing just by being accountable to someone once a week. Like we have a very big community aspect to the business. Like one of our pillars of, we call it our 5 elements of client success. In that we have, nutrition and training, we have psychology, we have education and community. And we genuinely believe that all 5 of those things come together to make a client succeed and achieve the result they want. And so community is a big one for us to make sure that people feel connected. So, even if they're not talking to me, there's always someone in the team around to talk to in WhatsApp, in the Coach Catalyst group, in the communities and things like that. Like we'll just try and sprinkle in education and knowledge, just trying to have people talk a bit of banter in there and engage. So the big thing for us is just making sure that even if it's not me you're talking to, there's someone to talk to. And I've kind of found that's been a big, a well-received part of the system, in that, they don't need the hour catch-up call. They just want to know that other people like them are there.
As a coach that runs challenges, I needed my life back. I had stuff all over the place. A Facebook group for community interaction, Google Sheets for check-ins and measurements, and was drowning in email communication. As my challenges grew past just a handful of people, I started to notice clients were falling through the cracks. I began researching virtual assistants because I just couldn't manage it all. And truthfully, the client experience was going down the drain. Luckily, a friend recommended Coach Catalyst and just told me to trust her. I'm sure glad I did. Now I can run my challenges with 2 or 200 clients with just a few clicks. The lessons get delivered on the right days, the accountability happens automatically, and most importantly, the communication is all in one spot. I even created 2 new challenges from the Coach Catalyst library. Best part, didn't have to change a thing. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to log into all the apps I needed. Now I log in and my dashboard tells me who needs a shout out and who needs a kick in the butt in about 15 seconds. I feel like a huge weight is lifted off of my shoulders. I can finally spend my time coaching again instead of worrying about all the admin work. Do your brain a favor and get Coach Catalyst.
So community is an interesting thing, especially in the online world, right? I think community is probably one of the hardest things to build in the online world, and like a good community, not just like a bunch of people in a group and no one talks, right? And so what have you guys done specifically that has allowed you to be successful in like building true community where clients ultimately become connected to other clients rather than just connected to the coaches?
I think one of the biggest things was like having a few initial personalities in there. Like, so I coached some close friends. I've coached people who have grown into friendships and relationships, and I really encourage them to try and be open and transparent in the system. I think a big barrier to entry psychologically is people are scared to expose themselves, and they're scared to be vulnerable in a situation where they might not know anyone. And so one of the issues I always found, again, like sort of going back to coaching me as a person, like if I was to get a coach, was that you feel unique and you feel isolated. Like in your group of friends, you might be the only person who thinks the way you do. Well, that was an experience for me. I was never on the same sort of wavelength as other people in the way I thought about training, life, sports, excellence. And so I think that was something that I try to recognize with clients. And having other clients, or at least a few clients that could be vulnerable, open to the topic, the conversations, try and trigger conversations or stir those conversations. And then myself being super transparent and open about experiences, situations. I heavily talk about with the team. You can watch any of our YouTube content. I heavily talk about, I have no issues talking about my father passing, the impact that had on me, how that redirected me, how I found the positives in it, tools that I've used for my own anxiety and depression, all these things where I think me as their coach, or in a non-arrogant way, I guess the person they kind of look up to in what they're trying to achieve, it allows them, I guess, to be more vulnerable themselves. Like, hey, well, this guy's talking about it and he's been on the IFBB stage, or he's played at this level of rugby league, or, this knowledge of business. And so I think that kind of gives them the safety net to say, well, he's trusting us, I can trust him. And the more people do that, I think the more others want to do it back or feel safe to do it back. And then from that, we really try to culminate events and make sure that the team is there in presence or force. And so my competitive season last year, there was, I think, 10 or 11 of our clients all wearing, we've got apparel that we give to a client when they sign up. We've got shirts. So you're instantly feeling like you're part of a team. There's options to buy other stuff. There's options to download things. Like there's always something to feel like you're a part of it. And so in the audience, we're competing and there's 10 clients in the stand. And then season A this year for bodybuilding, we had a client on stage, did really well, ended up with like 5 titles. Not only was, I there in coaching uniform, rocking doing what I do, there was 16 clients from the team, all from the team in the audience. Basically, it was just like a whole row of the amphitheater was just us all together, different people, unique goals, everyone doing individual things. But there were 16 of our team across the state of Queensland at this state title watching our client compete. And you kind of can't really put a word to or a value to how that feels on stage when you're looking out there and you see in a solo sport like that, my team is here and all these people are here to watch me and support me. And I think that really drove even further the difference that we have in community as a team to some of the other coaches perhaps that were at the same venue. It didn't really matter where you looked. You saw one of us wearing a shirt. And right. That I think is probably that unique aspect that made community such a big part for us.
And so are you still very calculated on how you continue to foster that? Like, are you reaching out to those people that are the people that you need, almost kind of like the leaders in the community, to show some vulnerability? Are you reaching out to them and kind of encouraging them to share so that other people will also kind of chime in? Or has it gotten to a point now where it's like rolling on its own?
No, so it kind of goes through peaks and troughs where it still needs a bit of like stoking the fire, if you will.
Right.
There's points in time where I'll share a bit more feedback of myself. Like I'll drop in some of my own progress. I think the newer clients or the younger lads that want to bodybuild, I think might only see me from my competitive era and sort of just be like, oh, he's just a coach he competes and it's easy for him. So I'll drop back some comparison photos or some before and afters of myself where, here was me, through my peak depression, just like diagnosis, disability, back pain, how overweight I got, out of condition I'd got, and just miserable, to here I am now and kind of, what I'm doing. And it kind of just, it's less for, hey, give me feedback or, stoke my ego. It's more so that these guys recognize that it wasn't easy for me. It's not easy for me. Like I'm not genetically just gifted at what I do or anything like that. I go through very different forms of approach to a lot of people because I know it's not as easy for me. And, knowing that I have that similar sort of client or people that need to see that, it allows them, I think, to recognize that, hey, this guy's not too different from me. I started in a very similar position, or I was in the same spot. And the same thing, we still get several clients now, and we've got several coaches on the team with their own backstories to competing and their own experiences to psychological issues around competing or training in general, or nutrition, dieting, body composition. So, we try and really push those to open up and discuss things. And then from there, I try and foster questions as well. Like, we've got a lot of physios, or we've got some educated rehabilitation specialists. And so I'll ask them questions in the group, hey guys, why are we doing prehabilitation stuff? Why am I getting you guys to warm up before the training session in specific areas versus just sort of jumping into the set? And you get a few of the more common speakers that will give answers. And that, I think, in the background is just encouraging more and more conversation with the ones who might be a little bit quieter, but at least they're seeing that conversation is still happening. It's available. There's knowledge being passed. The community is there for them to reach out to.
So for you and your business with Matter Athletica, what are the deliverables? Like, what are the week over week, month over month deliverables that you guys do for clients?
Yeah, so big thing for me is like it's a continued service. So I don't have a capped time frame for someone. I'll work with someone as long as they want to, or not as little as they want to. Like we will, generally have like a 4-week cancellation period. But the way the system works, it's a lot of periodizing and understanding the client individually to what they're trying to achieve. And a lot of physique or body composition based coaching, I don't care how advanced the coach says they are, a lot of it is trial and error and educated guesstimation. So, the data says this, the research says this, hands-on approaches have said this, let's combine all of that. This should make sense. Okay, but you've got these lifestyle factors and these issues, so it's going to be a little bit slower, or this might not work, we need a different approach. So a lot of it for me, that first, 4 weeks really, is figuring them out as people, understanding who they are, if anything's working, tracking their basics of data. So each week, from week 1 to week 100, you're getting weekly feedback videos, you're getting check-ins, data assessments, physique assessments, performance assessments, exercise reviews. So you're getting all that stuff basically just handed to you. That's week to week. That's what's included in the basics. And then from there, you're added to the group chat. We still really push a lot of free content to our clients. So, if you're a member of the team, or if you're signed up to the system, you get free access to our article research reviews. So like we do consistent exposure to research and understand, like we try and break down the literature and research as much as possible to the common man and try and make it more accessible and understandable. So we make sure that clients have a chance to upskill and educate themselves alongside being coached. Because I genuinely believe that if a person knows the why, the how becomes easy. So if they're understanding why we're doing a certain thing, or they understand the protocol or the process, hey, this is what we can expect, this is what should happen, they're more inclined to follow through with it. It's like, hey, I want to see that outcome. And so having that education aspect to me is a big part as well. So, we get the tangible stuff like your customizable programs, your nutrition, macros, your strategies, whether you want a meal plan, whether you want to learn about nutrition, weekly feedback, psychological assessments, tools and strategies, and that sort of thing. And then we go through the Coach Catalyst app, do our check-ins with their data, make sure that we're assessing everything, looking for their qualitative feedback. So I'll always make sure that clients are answering 5 big questions for me, which is how is training and recovery this week? How is your nutrition this week? What's an obstacle that you faced? What's an action to improve on for next week? And what's the smallest win you can possibly give me? So we're always making sure that just across the week, they're looking at all realms of what they're doing to hold themselves accountable to that next level. But on top of that, they're also looking at how they can be better. And then, if you had a miserable week, what's the smallest, most finite win that you had, so we can build some momentum and positivity for the next week. So, just having those things there, that's kind of like the tangible stuff each week you can expect from us. And the rest is just, I think, like a cherry on top.
And what's your range of where you get from a price point range? What's your guys' kind of ranges of services?
So pretty much I've got 2 major services at the moment. Like we were trying to do a lot at the start, and I've just narrowed it down to body composition or just week to week coaching as our general service. Now that doesn't change price if you're a bodybuilder, if you're just a general population, if you're just a general person.
Right.
We charge, that's $100 Australian a week for that. So basically it's the same price point across the board. And then I do one-off mentoring or like consistent mentoring. So for a lot of our, I've got clients that are coaches themselves, or people that just want to learn more psychological tools. People want to learn more about supplementation, nutrition. I've got educated individuals who might be more like physios and things like that. They want to learn more about, programming, exercise selection, nutritional strategies. And so I'll do mentoring for them, which is like just $150 for an hour. So that basically just kind of covers, you get me for that hour, bring your questions, bring your problems. Here's my feedback from that. I'll usually do some research references and provide them with some extra stuff. Like here's an example of, exercise selection or order selection or how to map out a program template. So I'll try and make sure that the big thing for me is always making sure that I over provide and undercharge. So, if I'm going to charge $100 a week, which in Australia is kind of in that premium realm, I make sure that you're getting so much more than what you're paying that you're just like, that's a no-brainer.
So if you were to go back and start Matter Athletica again from the beginning, is there anything you would do differently to get it up and off the ground?
Start sooner. I think
Okay.
Maybe not even start sooner. I think because the face-to-face side fizzled out. And so I don't even really consider that like an attempt. It was more so like I recognized that environment wasn't for me, that demographic of that gym, that location. And so that probably wasn't going to be my route again, unless I found a very specific culture that I wanted to work amongst or I create my own. And I think, if anything, it would just be to keep the experience going. So I would have done more free coaching. I would have done more, especially during that gap of, say, face-to-face to going online. I work with several people and sort of just did body composition, weight loss, fat loss, targeted hypertrophy, just some basics of body composition. I did a few of them across that time for free because I was just bored and I was just like, I just want to give some knowledge away. But I think the big thing would have been for me was just keep doing more free stuff, just to maintain that realm of exposure and result, because getting that initial, I think, startup without any background, not so much any background, but without any marketability is a bit harder to take off. So, in a realm of online where people can just lie. In Australia, you can kind of just, pump a 4-week program, smash someone with no food and a whole bunch of cardio, take the before and after, and here's a result. Now you've got, 20,000 followers. Very easy for you to snatch that market up. The way we coach and the way we do things, the system is long-term response. So, getting people to understand that without the instant result, the instant sort of like photos to say, hey, here's 2 years of work of a client, because I don't have that yet. I'm not going to just dump you with no food and get a recomposition and say, here's my awesome results. The system is designed for us to take you along for the ride and get you where you want to go. So I would have probably kept a bit more free value going in terms of actually working with people, just to maintain that experience and knowledge, and have some marketability as a coach. But other than that, honestly, like the ride's been nerve-wracking, exciting, scary, to go from a locked-in secure income to something that isn't guaranteed week to week. In fact, I was in a net red position for a long period of time. It was only the luck of me just being a more, I guess, conservative spender that I managed to save up some assets and things to sustain me. And then I dipped into my own prep. So I was like, I knew in Australia in the market, to really show what a big part of it is backing your word with action. And so going into my own prep and winning my title really, I think, solidified when I was basically coaching myself that I have to prove to people that I can do what I do and say what I say. And so, I had some clients work with me for free as well and got them on stage and then put myself on stage as well and kind of just back that up. So I think the route we took was the best way to go about getting to where we are now and where we're continuing to go. So I probably wouldn't change much more than that. Like realistically, everything has kind of led us to being here and where we are and what I'm doing. And, you kind of got to go through those hiccups and ups and downs and just get the experience as a coach online, especially. And I think we kind of made the best of what it was to be where we are now. We gave free content away. We do a free podcast. We do free downloadables. All our social medias give away knowledge and information. You can't really ask for much more from Matter in a sense of like free giving. And that I think is always going to be the value that lands well from us, is that there's always more to give than we take. And I think we kept that from day one to where we are now. And that's probably been what's helped us so much.
So one thing I want to touch on quick is you said you guys were kind of in the red for a period of time. And what ultimately got you out of that? Was it just kind of continuing to grind? Was there an event that was like, okay, or was it you getting on stage and winning that title that was kind of like the notoriety you needed in order to bring a bunch of people on, or something else?
Yeah, I think it was that. It was generally just the grind at first. Like it was hard, man. Like I was doubting myself. In my head, I'm like, I know X, Y, Z, but I got to get this to people. I got to show what I know. And so the doubt was there, like the constant self-assessment, like, do I know enough? Am I doing this right? Like, how do I do this? Constantly just like imposter syndrome. Like this isn't going to work. I'm not going to know what I'm doing. Like all these coaches have more knowledge than me. The reality is they probably didn't and don't. And that's something that's probably kept me going so much, is that the big thing for me, as I've always communicated, is that you're probably never going to find someone who will work as hard as I will to find the answer. If I don't have the answer, I don't know something, my level of not feeling like I'm giving you enough and not feeling like I'm living up to the standard will make me want to find that answer or provide you in the right direction. You can find it yourself. And that kind of like mentality grinded me through that starting point. Was that, I do have that self-doubt, I do have that insecurity and that lack of confidence, but it's not because I'm attacking myself. It's because I want to deliver at such a high level that if I feel like I'm not, I've got to give more. I've got to figure out more. So continually upskilling and pushing the knowledge realm, but then making sure I'm applying it. So I think the big issue is like a lot of people will go to all these courses and extracurriculars and go to these conferences, but take nothing home to apply. There's big speakers and big names that get pumped up by all this information, but how much of that did you take home and actually apply to your clients? And that first 12 months to me was just upskill, apply, and just make sure that every client that a certain topic might have applied to, I could use or I could continue to share. And then from that, we just kind of kept sharing the journey to stage. Like everything was on social media, podcasts, everything was just kind of like, here is how it's working. There is no like fluff. There's no like hidden stuff behind the scenes about supplementation. Like I'm telling you everything. This is how I'm doing it and where I'm starting, the position I'm in, where I finished. There's a video we had on YouTube, like that we did kind of like a documentary series on the last week leading up to the show. And, I went back and said like, was it 2022? So 2 years ago when I started uni, I sat down and mapped out my next comp. I mapped out the body fat measurements I wanted to be at, the weight I wanted to be at, the condition, the targets, the KPIs that I set for myself in terms of like, steps and non-negotiable boxes and sleep targets, all sort of jazz. 2 years ago, I mapped that out and I could go back and show you, I ticked every single one of those boxes. And the only thing on that on that checklist left for me to do was win. And knowing that was the only thing I had no control of in bodybuilding, you really just don't have control of it unless you've done all the work and, put yourself in that position to potentially win. And this was a documentary before I got to the stage. So, I went back and sort of had that authenticity of the fact that I asked my clients to track stuff. I asked my clients to do their data. I asked my clients to sleep on time. I do it too. And I'm not going to ask you to do something that I haven't done. I've done all the extremes you could possibly imagine to get to where I am. So I'm not going to ask you to do something I haven't done. And that transparency is in our content. So getting to the stage and sort of solidifying it with that proof, I guess, kind of locked it all in. And we had a big influx of competitors and athletes and stuff straight after that season. And then just clients just grew from there where, one bodybuilder got a result and their friend got a result and their friend. So it just kind of exploded from that point to where we are now.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I mean, what's next? What's next for kind of your company with Matter Athletica? Like, what's the next step?
So a big thing for us is always going to be just delivering. Like the high performance delivering is, for me, one of the most fulfilling things I'll ever do. Is, I had one of my young guys message me last night and just say that, he's loving bodybuilding. He's loving building his physique. He's a natural young fella. So he's only 22, I think he's 22, 21. But it was a moment to him of clarity where he messaged me and sort of said, if it wasn't for Matter and the team and everyone doing their thing, I wouldn't be as passionate about my degree. He's like, I've knuckled down. I've gone to all my subjects, done all my classes. I'm passing my grades. He's like, I was kind of doing it because, and just sort of like, was expected to go to uni. But now he's like, I actually think I can succeed in this field of knowledge and what I'm studying if I want to pursue it. So that to me is like that level of high performance from even a young age, like recognizing that there are 20-somethings, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds that were like me, that wanted someone to tell them it's okay to push a big goal and actually start to achieve it. That's always going to be like my bread and butter, if you will, of the system. Like I want that for people that to achieve that level, that result. And bodybuilding to me is always a vessel of facilitating that understanding of delayed gratification and goal setting and performance and accountability. So that's always going to be something we push. The next target for us, though, is to really get into the education sector. So the Matter Institute is something that we're working on to really bring out a lot more educational content for other coaches. I've got basically 3/4 of a course written on body composition in the way that I coach it, using a lot of research principles, data-backed, evidence-based coaching, but also like anecdotal and psychological tools that I've used and I've benefited from. So that's a big aspect for us to really start taking the company that next level, is recognizing the, what's that, arrogant, but the gap in what's delivered in your certs over here versus what you probably need to actually impact someone's life properly. There's a big gap. Mm-hmm. And it's either what courses to go study to learn it, or, we shortchange it and kind of just combine it all into one aspect. So that's going to be a big part of the system for us in the future to come, is going to be expanding the Matter Institute. But I think the biggest thing first and foremost for us is going to be my first international presentation, which will be at the Super Coach Summit in August. So that's the big nerve-wracking excitement for me, is our first international trip as a company, and our first sort of chance to talk to an international audience about what we know and what we do. A list of 20-something speakers, and getting the chance to be out there and talk about body composition is going to be pretty nerve-wracking, but I'm confident I can drop more knowledge than these people probably understand is coming. So that's the big thing to me first, is to make sure I deliver on that.
Yeah, I love it. We're excited. We're excited for you to be a part of it and come over and hang with us. So, man, this has been great. So I kind of have some rapid fire stuff that I want to just kind of tie everything together, completely unrelated to anything we've been talking about so far, just a little bit more entertaining. So this first one, I don't know, how popular is like Mexican food in Australia? Do you guys do Mexican food or not?
Yeah, we do Mexican. Yeah. I mean, our version of Mexican, don't know how authentic it is.
Yeah, well, whatever. So taco, burrito, or quesadilla, which one do you choose?
Burrito.
Burrito?
Burrito.
I like it.
Burrito.
All right, next one. If you could live in any cartoon world for a week, what cartoon world do you live in?
I mean, going by these guys back here in the background, we're going in the Marvel animated universes for sure.
I love it. Nice. Next one, if you could be reincarnated as an animal based on your personality, what kind of animal do you come back as?
Oh, Jesus. I mean, it's such a cliche answer. Everyone's probably like, I don't know, someone's got motivated or something, but I reckon it'd be awesome to come back as a wolf.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see it. I think it's a good one. I like it. Do you guys have a lot of wolves in Australia or not?
No.
No, I didn't think so. All right. Last one we got here. If you could sit down and have dinner with anyone on the planet, past or present, who do you want to sit down and chat with?
You can't even rapid fire that question. I mean, it could easily be this. It could easily be this guy right here that I would froth that conversation. But at the same time, I'm a big believer in stoicism, and it's been a big philosophy for me. So it could be, Marcus Aurelius, his writing on meditations. I could sit down and talk with him. I can't even rapid fire that answer. Stan Lee, I'm a massive Marvel fan, like a massive Marvel comic nerd. So, sitting down with Stan Lee, and it could be Jordan Peterson, like a massive psychological student. So, any one of those four to me would be, I could spend days at that table talking.
I love it, man. So if people want to find out a little bit more about what you're doing, more about Matter Athletica, where are some of the best places on the internet to go?
Yeah, so we've got, we've expanded as much as we can now on the social platforms. So you can find me at Ben_Mayfield-Smith_ I think it is. You can find Matter_Athletica on it. So that's our Instagrams. You can find the Matter Mentality podcasts, and you'll probably find my Coach Cav episode on there too. So you hear Cav talk a bit of shit.
Cool.
And you could probably find us you probably can. You absolutely can find us on YouTube at Matter Athletica. So we've got a lot of the combination on YouTube is a mixture of our training vlogs, documentaries, interview episodes and stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably across where you'll find us. And then the website, matterathletica.com.
Cool. I love it. We'll make sure all that is in the show notes as well. Ben, it's been awesome. I appreciate you hanging out and kind of sharing knowledge and sharing your story and kind of inspiring the next generation of coaches. Love it, man.
I appreciate you having us on, man. I appreciate it. It's been great.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.